Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais with another episode of Health Declassified, where we uncover the truths behind health and wellness. We do that by bringing you expert guests, and today is certainly no exception. We have a guest who's going to talk about a really important topic, so stay tuned. But first of all, let's introduce co-host Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Peter. Thank you. And thank you so much for tuning into our show. We so appreciate having you. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us today and a very interesting topic. We'd like to welcome Dr. Elliot Justin to the show. Hello, Dr. Justin. How are you?
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, Dr. Justin, or as you've allowed us to call you Elliot, you are the CEO and founder of FirmTech. It's the world's first sex tech company focused on keeping men firm and fit for a better lifetime of lovemaking and pleasure. So today, he is here to chat with us about the use of tech to improve men's sex lives. Let's just jump right in. Elliot, can you please tell us how widespread the problems of erectile dysfunction are and how they're linked to cardiovascular issues?
Sure. Well, it's a genuine pandemic, and it's international. So by age 50, 50% of men report having erectile dysfunction. I'm 72. By my age, it's 70%. And even men as young as 30, the incidence is about 25 to 28%.
Oh
So
my.
this is a significant problem, and obviously sexual health is critically important to people, to their relationships, to their overall health, but it's also a profound reflection of their cardiovascular health. And that's actually how I got involved in this. My background, I'm an emergency medicine physician,
Mhm.
and I can tell you that short of a heart attack or stroke, there's few emergencies that concern a man as much as a limp penis, especially if it happens two or three times. Kathleen, I'm certain, like most women, you're aware of how fragile men are about this issue. So, I mean, men seem to only be as good as the last two or three erections. So it's I in addition to being an emergency medicine physician, I'm also a sensor remote patient management expert,
Mhm.
and involved in remote patient management sensor technology, expert. And that's actually how I got involved in this. About 4 years ago, a professor of urology at the University of Utah told me that he was interested in counting the number of nocturnal erections that men have. And I said, whatever for? I was ignorant. And he said, well, it's actually a leading indicator of a man's cardiovascular health. And that kind of took me aback because in medicine, leading indicator is a very powerful phrase. It means it's predictive. In medicine,
Hmm.
in general, we treat things that are associations.
Yep.
So high blood pressure is associated with heart attack.
Right.
It's not predictive though. I mean, if my systolic blood pressure goes from 110 to 140, it's not telling me I'm gonna have a heart attack. It just tell me, hey, pay attention to this. This might mean something. If my cholesterol goes from, I'll make it up, 200 to 260, it's not telling me anything about atherosclerosis. It's just suggesting that there might be a problem.
Hmm.
Right.
I should do something about it. If a healthy man has three plus nocturnal erections per night between the age of 25 and 70. Uh, if that number goes down by 50%, that man has a 50% chance of having a heart attack in the next 2 to 3 years. So
What?
that's powerful. That's a leading
Yeah.
indicator. That's predictive. And I'd never heard of that. And I was unaware until 3 or 4 years ago that the urologist called the penis the canary in the coal mine of cardiovascular disease. So why is the penis so important in cardiovascular disease?
Mhm.
Because um, erectile dysfunction is basically a warning sign, not just of might be issues in a personal relationship or might be have to do with um, actual problems with the penis, but it's reflecting your cardiovascular health. So why is that? The heart's a pump. If the pump is failing, if the man has angina, congestive heart failure, has had heart attacks, not getting enough blood to the penis will have the issues.
Hmm.
Similarly, the pipes that come out of the heart, the arteries, if they're narrow or constricted, not enough blood goes to the penis, and the man can have issues with that. But that said, I really want to, as I mentioned to you before, just before we started, I don't like the word dysfunction.
Right.
And why is that?
Mhm.
Well, it doesn't describe the problem that most men have. So the doctors have grouped together into one big category, two groups that don't belong. They say both these groups are in the ED category. And this error has occurred because the physicians have made a common mistake in medicine, which is especially academic doctors, we see the sickest people in our practices, and
Mm-hmm.
we project their problems onto the general population.
Hmm.
So what does that mean in terms of sexual health? The academic urologists are seeing men in their practice who can't get an erection or struggle to get an erection. And that's only about 10 to 12% of men. So these are men with angina, poorly controlled diabetes, poorly controlled hypertension, significant atherosclerosis. Um, and for these men, the penis is truly the canary in the coal mine of cardiovascular disease. These men are dysfunctional. If a man can't get an erection or struggles to get an erection, I have no problem with calling that man dysfunctional. And that man needs to see a cardiologist, neurologist. He has a significant healthcare problem. But the vast majority of men, even men my age, and even tad older like Peter, they we get erections, but with those as we get older, those erections fade faster.
Mm-hmm.
Is that dysfunction? No, because
No.
if a man gets an erection and loses it, he has a problem. And it's really shaming to men to kind of tell these men, well, you got ED, because you don't have ED, you have a problem. So in my early medical career, late 70s and 80s, women were still being described as being frigid, anorgasmic, hysteric, cold. And the feminists came along and said appropriately, bullshit, excuse me, language. You shouldn't be
Right.
describing people this way. It's shaming. It's
Mm-hmm.
also not accurate. If there's a
Hmm.
problem, dysfunction it's in this case, there's a huge problem. But if there's an issue that can be readily addressed, we should not describe this as dysfunction because that will enable people to talk about it. Men are ashamed to discuss this with each other. Men are ashamed to discuss this with their doctors, and the doctors are embarrassed to bring it up. Whereas if we took it out of the realm of dysfunction, talked about it as a
Mm-hmm.
problem, well, then it's not. So I like to think about it in terms of erectile fitness. I've actually coined that phrase.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let me draw an analogy to and we're a very fitness-oriented culture, Canada,
Yeah.
United States, etc. If if a problem we are all on the road, men and women, from erectile fitness, sexual fitness, to erectile sexual dysfunction. We all would like to know, where am I on that road? Whether it's someone as young as you, Kathleen, or someone as old as me.
Hmm.
Where am I on that road? Uh, and of course, we would like to ideally be able to say, I'm not going down this road anymore. I'm making a U-turn. I'm going to stop. I'm going to repair whatever it is that needs to be repaired. But we don't have any data. We don't drive a car without a dashboard. We rely upon our dashboard to tell us, hey, Elliot, you're still driving 100 miles per hour. That's great, but you only have 1/8 of a tank left.
Mm-hmm.
Or an engine light comes on before we have a problem. You're an idiot if you don't pay attention to the engine light because you might be running out of exhaust fluid and might not know it. But when it comes to sexual health, we don't have a dashboard. And that's what the tech ring that we invented provides men. It gives them a dashboard. Where
Okay.
am I on this road from fitness to dysfunction? Where am I? If I like where I am, I'll just monitor it the way my blood pressure or electrocardiogram on a quarterly or yearly basis. If I have a problem, then I want to address it. So we are providing people with data about their most, especially for men, about their most interesting vital sign.
Right. I'm curious
Interesting.
about something though. You
Sure.
said that there's definitely a correlation, or it's predictive, as you said, of cardiovascular issues. Have you ever seen a case where someone didn't have erectile fitness and had a perfectly good cardiovascular system?
Well, because the erectile significant erectile dysfunction is associated with multiple sclerosis. There are other neurological conditions,
Sure.
severe alcoholism, drug abuse. There are other causes of
Okay.
significant erectile
Okay.
or significant erectile dysfunction other than cardiovascular.
Right.
But cardiovascular is the big one and the one that men want to should be paying
Hmm.
attention to.
Interesting.
Mm, okay.
We have documented 85,000 erections, maybe more right now. There are 6 published papers, maybe 7 published papers, and more underway. And research is showing, confirming that what the doctors have been treating have been is pump failure or arterial insufficiency. And for people who have heart attacks, angina, atherosclerosis, out of control diabetes, poorly controlled hypertension, that's true. But for the vast majority of men, that's not true. Here's what the data shows. And I was surprised by the data as well, too.
Mhm.
If you don't mind my illustrating my hands,
Sure, go
the
ahead.
incidence of
Sure.
erectile dysfunction goes up 10% per decade after age
Mhm.
40 or 45. By my age, it's 70%. That's a big number. What the doctors were expecting was as the incidence of erectile dysfunction goes up, the number of nocturnal erections would go down, the firmness of nocturnal erections would go down, and most important, the firmness of sex erections would go down. Now, that's true
Okay.
for that 10 to 15% of men who have bad disease, have bad heart disease.
Right.
Mhm.
But it's not true for the rest of the men. The rest of the men stay firm, and there's a little bit of tapering. Then their sex erections, the number of nocturnal erections stays relatively stable until the late 60s, early 70s, and then start tapering a little bit, but not tapering enough that they can't get hard, especially as reflected in the nocturnal erections. The nocturnal erections are a key to this because they have less variables. I'm
Yes.
not involved with my partner. I'm not worrying about the mortgage at night. I'm not, the things that go on between individuals that can
Mhm.
lead to dysfunction are not present. I'm not getting drunk. I'm not
Right.
smoking. I'm not with, there's no baby crying in the room the room next door, hopefully at night. So all these variables are removed. So the nocturnal erections are important because they're more objective. Because they
Yep.
eliminate a lot of variables.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
why is it that men are staying hard at night but reporting more erectile dysfunction? And
Hmm.
the problem is on the other side of the circulation. It's on the venous side of the circulation. And the doctors weren't thinking about
Uh,
this. And we should have been thinking about it. So every erection ends with male or female. Every erection ends with blood leaving the penis, or for that matter, the clitoris. As we get older, the blood leaves those organs faster. This
right.
is less of an issue for women because vibrators have been normalized for women. Again, in my lifetime, back in the late 70s, early 80s, when I was still dating, there was still this concern about vibrator dependency, vibrator addiction, and now they're normalized. I don't know how many. I mean, it, if you told most women you're vibrator addicted, we're taking that away from you, they'd say like, hey, that's divorce or forget it, find another woman. So I mean, I don't know how many vibrators my wife owns. You could probably come to bed with a bandolier of them, and depending on what she wants, what she's thinking about for that night in terms of her pleasure, it's great these tools exist for women. And our daughter who's 30 used to take them on dates. It, there are still some
No.
inhibitions about them, but overall they've been normalized. There's nothing like that for men other than erection rings, and they've not been normalized. We want them to be normalized because the data shows that all men's performance will be improved by an erection ring. And let me explain why. If you had told me, Kathleen and Peter, that 4 years ago I'd be talking about the importance of erection rings for men, I would have responded like most doctors still respond today, which is that, why? I don't need that. But it's not really about need. So let me explain. I just talked about before how about more men reporting ED,
Mhm.
but they're still pumping up blood into their penis. They're getting erections and they're losing it. And they could be losing those erections for reasons that are multifactorial. It could be some of the people, no, I'm not married 37 years. What do people not want to discuss with their long-term partners? I'm bored. That position bores me. You've done something that's boring to me. No one wants to talk about boredom. Two, there's alcohol, recreational drugs, medications that doctors prescribe that impact on erections,
Mhm.
psychosocial issues, worrying about the mortgage. There's things that go on. But
Mhm.
if a man gets an erection, every erection ends with blood leaving the penis. The goal needs to be, regardless of the circumstances, to hold blood in the penis, and only an erection ring can do that. And I didn't understand this. My reaction would have been, I don't need that. It's not about need for men, like with vibrators. I mean, I'll just focus on my wife. She doesn't mind. She doesn't need a vibrator. She wants a vibrator. Most women don't need a vibrator, but they want a vibrator. Why
Right.
is that? Because it enhances their pleasure and it makes them confident, et cetera, et cetera. It makes things makes things easier. Men have this attitude towards rings. So 90% of gay men use erection rings regularly. Only 10% of straight men do. And one of the jokes we have about doctors when we go to the American Urology Association or International Society for Sexual Medicine conferences is you can tell the difference between a gay doctor and a straight doctor with one question. Do you use an erection ring? Gay doctor. Like gay doctors look like you're an idiot. Yeah, like last night, you got a better one? Straight doctor, I don't need that because it's the male pride thing. It's
Of
not about
course,
need though.
of course.
It's
Right.
about want. If
Right.
a man wants to, and I'll give you some, I'll speak about this crudely if you don't mind. If a man wants to rock harder, last longer, be more confident, and because he's now holding more blood in his penis because of a ring, have a more intense orgasm, because the more blood is held, the more intense the orgasm, put a ring on it. And so the ring has two values. I mean, the ring, one, there's this data. And the data is for men over the age of 45, 50. I'm
Mhm.
confident that collecting data about man's sexual health as it reflects cardiovascular health, that's going to become standard. I mean, I don't, if we went to, if everyone on this call, all three of us went to a doctor right now and said, I'm here for my annual physical, I feel great. And the doctor said, Kathleen, you look great. I'll see you next year. You would think, you're not going to check an electrocardiogram. You're not going to check my
Hmm.
blood pressure. You're not
Right.
going to check my lipoproteins or my inflammatory markers. We expect that doctors' assessment of us will be based upon data. But when
Right.
it comes to sexual health, right now, it's just they don't even ask. But if they do ask, for men, it's take a pill. Well, that's not
Yeah.
how we would treat
Hmm.
blood pressure or cardiac. Kathleen, if you came to me and said, "Gee, Dr. Justin, when I work out, my pulse is irregular and I feel faint," and I said, Kathleen, that's interesting. Take a pill and come back in 3 months. You would think, "What? You're not going to check my blood pressure? How about an electrocardiogram?" But that's what we are with sexual health, and it's time that men realize two things: one, you can get data about your health, and two, put a ring on it because it will
Mm,
improve your performance.
interesting. Wow, wow, wow. So that confirms what I've read from several other doctors that who say that the most important sexual organ is the brain, right? Because picking up on what you're saying, a lot of the problems of poor performance are related to emotional or other problems rather than cardiovascular. So, something that interests me, and this is probably a difficult one to answer with any degree of accuracy because men are bulldusters about their sexual performance. I know I spent time in the army, and to admit that one might be underperforming would have been worse than committing treason, really. It was such a mortal sin. Was never even thought of. So no man would ever admit back in the 70s and 80s he had a problem. Their wives probably would. But from your observation, has this problem been getting worse? Are more men having inadequacy problems in this area, or is it just that we're finding out more about it?
I think, well, we don't know. I mean,
No.
the assumption of the medical community is that it's more of a problem now than before,
Hmm.
and that somehow or other it relates to several things. One, the testosterone levels are 50% of what they were in the 1970s.
What?
That is kind of shocking. Yes,
Yeah.
men's testosterone is half of what it was in the 1970s.
And is
So
that
there's that.
related because of the toxic food that we're eating and
Yeah,
the
well, there's a strong association with endocrine inhibitors in our diet, which are
yeah.
basically the microplastics, the nanoplastic particles that
Hmm.
we eat all the time. They're unavoidable, and obviously their consumption has increased over the decades.
Wow.
Could there also be cultural factors? Um, Likely, although they seems to be across cultures because the incidence of erectile dysfunction is even higher. Well, it's higher in the Persian Gulf, which people attribute to Islamic culture.
Hmm.
It's higher in Southeast Asia as well too. The doctors there talk about how people are spending more time online, and there are things that enter into that nature. Sometimes it gets to be kind of people's doctor speculations about this border on it's kind of ridiculous. I've spoken to experts both in Japan and South Korea, for example, about this, and the Japanese seem to think that the Koreans aren't as bad off as Japanese because they eat more red pepper in their diet. I'm not here to advocate eating red pepper, but it's a
Hmm.
lot. But it's certainly the impression of the physicians that it's a growing problem uh, due to both the deterioration of the testosterone and also deterioration of male confidence.
Confidence,
Uh,
yeah.
and feeling that they're being and concerns about them being judged by their partners for their adequacy. It's hard to quantify, though, Catherine.
Mhm.
Right.
Would you have any studies from societies or cultures that are not what we would call first world? So tribal people in Africa, for instance, is there any indication if they are behind the curve on this or not, or has that not been researched?
I'm not aware of any research about
Mm.
that. Um, I can't comment on that.
Okay. No,
So,
no, fair enough.
so you've
Back to you, Kathleen.
developed this tech ring and a performance ring. Tell us about it, and can you show us?
Sure. Well, one of the problems with erection rings is that they've unlike vibrators, they've been very. I mean, you know, in my mother's vibrator was this massive tool that she hid away in a supply closet drawer. This was back in the early '60s. There's been right now the vibrators come in all sizes, all shapes, all textures. For men, though, erection rings have been these hard silicone rings. They pinch, they're uncomfortable. They can compromise the circulation. They really shouldn't be worn for more than 20 or 30 minutes. And there's been a real lack of imagination about form and function, with them. In order to count the number of nocturnal erections overnight, what I didn't realize is that we're going to have to reinvent the erection ring as well too, because we needed a material that would allow the arterial blood to flow in and only constrain the venous return. So we would not choke off the penis at night and capture the erection. So our devices are made out of elastomer and not silicone. Silicone is an uncomfortable material. It makes you adapt to it. Women understand this more than men do because women wear bras. And the back of the bra, there's a silicone band. And I would say, I think about probably about half the heterosexual sex in the world is when a woman takes off a bra at night and wants her back scratched because the silicone is irritating to the back.
Mhm.
Um, the our rings are made out of elastomer, so they're soft, it's stretchy. Elastomer as a material adapts to us. It doesn't make
Hmm.
us adapt to it. So elastomer allows the arterial blood to flow in and only constrains the venous return. Our devices are also easy on, easy off. I mean, they open and close with a hook. So for safety purposes,
Right.
and ease of putting it on. That idea came to me when I was scratching my wife's back. Her bra was lying on the ground, and I said, "Oh, duh. A bra is a ring that opens and closes with a hook.
Right.
Women don't put
Yeah.
on bras over their
Yeah.
head. Let's They don't put on bras over their head. Why are we making rings for men that have to be opened up, snapped over the penis? They're uncomfortable. Why don't we have a ring that opens and closes with a hook?
Mm.
The testicles get dropped in like that,
Okay.
and it sits like that. So it can be worn overnight. It can also be worn during sex. So worn overnight, there are two sensors inside of this. Worn overnight, it counts the number of nocturnal erections, how long they last, how hard they are. Worn during sex, it measures duration and firmness. And with this data, men and the healthcare providers can now figure out what's the impact of diabetes, heart disease, hypertension upon my sexual health. I want to take testosterone. Let's establish a baseline. So I can then say, what's the right dose? What dose works for me? Am I going to have more nocturnal erections? Are they lasting longer in my heart, which is one of the goals of testosterone replacement therapy? If I'm considering shockwave therapy or some other modality, again, establish a baseline and monitor it. If I'm taking Viagra or Cialis,
Mhm.
what's the right dose? Because right now it's a one size fits all approach,
Hmm.
and that's
Right.
stupid. So one of the advantages of data of wearables with data is the data is objective, it's actionable, but most important, it's personal.
Hmm.
It's you. And what
Right.
doctors stupidly do is we treat everyone as if the one size fits all.
Mhm.
Kathleen, you and I are obviously different genders, different ages, different physical condition. But if we went to a doctor in the United States or Canada right now and they said, "Hey, you got high blood pressure, we'll put you on a pill," they would put us on the same pill,
Yep.
the same dose, and tell
100%.
us to come back in 3 to 6 months. Now
Hmm.
that's stupid. Why is it stupid? Because we have blood pressure cuffs. They should tell us, "Hey, Kathleen or Elliot, go home. I want to start taking blood pressure readings twice a day, morning and evening. We're going to put you on this dose, but get back to me in 2 weeks with your readings and let's adjust the dose because
Mhm.
you might respond, I might not respond." So I'll pick on Peter right now. if Peter and I went to a doctor right now and said, gee, my sexual performance is just not what I want it to be. It wasn't what it was like 10 years ago. Canada or the United States or the UK or Australia or France or Spain or anywhere else, they would say, hey, Elliot, Peter, take this pill. Come back in 3 months. Well, that's stupid because now with data, we can say,
Mhm.
hey, Elliot, if we're getting data, it'd be 2 weeks later, hey, Elliot, that 10 milligrams of Cialis, it's really improved things for you. Or they could say to Peter, Peter, it's not working for you. Let's consider increasing the dosage, or maybe there's some other factor that's going on.
Hmm.
Maybe there's some reason why you are not responding to this because we're all different. And I
Sure.
hate the stupid one size fits all approach that doctors take to anything in medicine, blood pressure, erectile dysfunction, because we now have data that can be personal and we're all individuals.
Mm. And on that, Dr. Justin, on that ring, how comfortable is that for the female partner?
Most of the female partners like it. Why do they like it? Because
Extra.
it's
Yes.
it's covered with a soft elastomer.
Okay.
So it provides another contact point for the clitoris. So
I
as
thought so.
um, now Kathleen's a young lady. I'll just pick on my wife, who's 70, 71 now, actually. Um, Rubbing clitoris on pubic bone is not a turn on for her. It might have been when she was 25 or 28 years old. It's actually she actually likes the fact that there's this other larger, softer contact point, especially with a little bit of lube on it. So most of the comments that I receive from women are positive about it. I would say
Good.
I don't think of like two comments that are negative, and they're more there are women who are simply not used to a guy putting on a device, you know,
Hmm.
and that can require kind of a shift of mind.
Sure. That's
Right,
very interesting.
right.
Very interesting. Um, so the big secret is, for an older man, once you've got that data, you know what's happening. You can then choose the right course of action to sort out any problems that you may have detected, right? Instead of,
Yeah, there's
you were
something else
saying,
about this
just
stuff, Peter, which
yeah.
is I don't know about you, but when I go to the doctor uh, and at my age and gets, say, a CT calcium score, which every man should get, it's a much better way of looking at your cardiac health for women too, postmenopausal women. And my CT calcium score is good. I feel good.
Hmm.
When I see my data, and I can show it to you. I'm pull it up right now. When I see my data that tells me that my sexual health is good, a 7.5 score is above average for my age.
Right.
6.5 is normal for my age. I'll show you a recording in a second moment. But when I see that my data looks good, I feel good. Here's an example. This is what a recording looks like. So over here, that's my wife and I having sex last night, and then I'm having two nocturnal erections here.
Okay.
My erections are a 10 in hardness, and I'm having an average number of nocturnal erections for a little slightly above average for a man my age. That's valuable to me.
Of course. Of course.
I
Wow.
actually go ahead. On the other hand, if it was below average, I'd be concerned.
But you
So
would do something about it.
correct. So we've had two men that I'm aware of get cardiac catheterizations because they saw their data was terrible.
Hmm.
And we have men who are in the sort of borderline range. They should be having 3+ per night and having say 2. And they can fix it. They can fix it by adjusting the medications. We doctors prescribe certain antihypertensive medications and antidepressants that impact a man's sexual performance. I spoke with a guy yesterday who significantly cut back on his drinking, and he can see the
Jeez.
improvement in performance. The hardest of his nocturnal erections went from off the top of my head 4.4, I think, to 6.5. Well, that's a 1/3 improvement,
That's
a
right.
50% improvement, if you will, just by cutting almost he said almost eliminating his nighttime consumption of liquor.
Mm.
So the data is actionable and impactful.
Wow. Very good. Very good. Kathleen?
Well, I just have a couple of questions in my head.
Sure.
But first of all, are you developing any of these devices for women?
Here it is.
Oh, show us.
So this is the world's first monitor of the health of the clitoris. Do you recognize it, Kathleen? It's not yours. But the uh, no. So it basically this goes behind the pubic symphysis, pubic bone.
Right.
And there'll be a sensor there that captures people can see as muscle contractions of arousal and orgasm. But we're specifically interested in the sensors on both sides of the clitoris, the glands in the clitoris, the visible clitoris, if you will. And those sensors tell us about blood flow into the clitoris. And with information, this information for women is going to transform both, not just the health of postmenopausal women, but premenopausal women.
Uh,
Postmenopausal women have all the same men do with heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, atherosclerosis,
Right.
obesity. And the sexual problems are worse because they have no testosterone. And I'm
Right.
confident that within 3 years, 4 years, testosterone therapy for postmenopausal women will be the norm because in my personal
Mm.
experience prescribing it, the impact is profound. And we'll be able to guide their dosing, if you will,
Mm.
by we know with data. But premenopausal women take birth control and antidepressants. Obviously, men don't take birth control, and premenopausal women take like I don't know, like 8 to 10 times as much anti-anxiety and depressant medications as men do. What's the right dose?
Right.
What's the impact on my sexuality? I mean, it's a tragedy to my
mhm.
mind that in the developed world, there are women in their 20s, even or 30s, who've never experienced what their natural sexuality is because since the adolescence, they've been taking hormones and anti-anxiety medications. But once you can measure blood flow into the clitoris, women can now say objectively, what's the right dose for me? Do we even want to take this?
Right. So, there's a
Ah,
lot of people that would say to you, well, doctor, you don't you don't need sex to live. Come on, it's not necessary. Yes, it's a pleasurable
Well,
thing, but nobody needs it. So, I
well,
mean,
it's not a need, but life is better without it, and not just because of the pleasure. Why? Why is it better? So
well,
here's just some
if
examples.
you have no libido and you don't feel like it, what's the big deal?
Well, there's a bell curve here, and those people, frankly, are outliers
yep.
because for the majority of people, sex is profoundly important. And not just important because of the pleasure it gives us. I mean, just some stats. Most people are interested in a in a in a happy and committed relationship. Some aren't, but most are. The
Mhm.
vast majority of people are. We know that couples that have sex 3 times a week versus couples that have sex less than 2 times a month have half the divorce or separation rate. And divorce and separation has a profound impact upon people's mental health
hmm
and upon their cardiovascular health. It affects their immune system as well too. And most importantly, if they have children, it affects them profoundly. We know the impact of divorce and separation on children's becoming alcoholics, becoming drug addicts, finishing high school, upon finishing college. We even correlates with the income that their children make after college. So keep people together, be profoundly valuable. And if our politicians really cared about people, and I proposed this to 3 commissioners of health in the United States unsuccessfully, it'd be great if they came out and said, how about Starmer, your guy, coming out tomorrow and saying, I want to help Canadians be happier. And here's a program that's going to benefit everyone. It doesn't require the government to spend any money. I want Canadians to have more sex. Imagine President Trump saying that. I mean, it's inconceivable, but it'd be so valuable. So then that's the psychosocial benefit.
hmm
But a big study out of the UK showing that men over the age of 70 who have sex twice a week versus men who don't have sex, they cut the risk of cardiac death by 50% over the next 10
Wow.
years. Now let's focus on women too. We
It's
know that women
huge.
between the age of 35 and 45 who have an orgasm every day cut their cortisol, stress hormone, they cut the cortisol level up to 50%. So people might want to say for whatever reason, it could be personal, it could, and I recognize again it's a bell curve. Libidos vary, but people want to say, "Yeah, I don't care." Okay, well, you don't care, but maybe you should know the facts. Maybe here's the reasons why maybe you should care.
Right.
Oh, wow, that is amazing. How much, if we look back to our younger years, mine a little ahead of yours, obviously, or a little behind yours, whichever way you look at it. But when very
I'm
few
catching up,
women,
Peter.
yeah, I know. I mean, my mother never worked outside the house, right? And many of my my colleagues, my generation, and I grew up in Southern Africa, was perhaps a little different to North America, but very few mothers worked outside the house once they had children. Um,
Yes.
so with women, I mean, it's good that a lot more women have become financially independent. I'm not arguing that in the slightest, but with women being pressured to work out because of pressure from society, pressure to succeed, economic pressure to have two incomes per family, has that been a contributor to this whole combined lack of sexual activity between couples, in couples?
I would imagine that it does. But that said, there is time, and I think people need to plan for pleasure. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't a lot of the women that you're talking about who now work outside the home and they have more stress and they have more demands made upon their time. Uh, I think those things are factors, but many of those people still find time to exercise or to watch TV
Yes.
or to
Watch
spend
TV.
time
Yeah.
online. I mean, so
Hmm.
I think that a lot of people be, they get out of the habit, if you will,
Yeah.
a habit
Yeah.
or the drive just sort of diminishes. It's so I really urge people to plan for pleasure. I don't just mean
Hmm.
date nights. If people are just going to try to have sex twice a month on a date night, they'll probably drink too much and end up complaining about each other because there's always stuff to complain about, especially once you
Yeah.
start drinking. Um,
Yes.
but when people want to get fit, they don't like rely upon things being spontaneous. And a lot of people have this notion that, well, sex should be spontaneous. Well, I don't think that's true. I think you need to sort of commit yourself to it emotionally, to it. I don't go to the gym to get fit and think, hey, what do I want to do today? No, I have a plan. I have a whiteboard in my mind at least. And if I work out with a
Mhm.
trainer, that trainer doesn't like do things randomly. Kathleen and Peter, if you got, I'm a really good cook, and if you came to Bozeman, Montana to visit me, I wouldn't say, "Oh, the doorbell just rang. Kathleen and Peter here. What's in the refrigerator? I got some rotisserie chicken. Throw it in the microwave. Put some hot sauce on it." No, I would plan a meal for us. Several courses. People should approach lovemaking the same way,
Yes.
and I think a lot of people fail to do that. And I don't quite understand why, Peter. Why people? Because if you were going to rely upon spontaneity, there's always other things that come up, like I'm tired.
Hmm.
Oh, I've had one to drink too many. Oh, I've got a presentation I got to make tomorrow. I got to go over the kids' homework or whatever it is. And I just I don't understand the deep prioritization of sex because it is so pleasurable. I don't get it. But the answer is the plan for pleasure.
Right. So, Elliot,
Yeah.
those of, we might have a lot of people watching this that might feel, oh gosh, w- my husband and I are not having regular sex, and are we abnormal? And I'm wondering, what would you say to those people that are now thinking, oh my gosh, this isn't normal, or am I not
Well,
normal?
people, as opposed to thinking about what's normal, I think it's people need to think about what do they want? Don't you want
Mhm.
I mean, aside from the pleasure of orgasms, people should want the intimacy, the connection. I'd
Mhm.
use an old-fashioned word that because too many people think transactionally today. What's in it for me? What do I
Yeah.
have to trade in order to get this?
Right.
They should want the intimacy and the romance. To use an
Yeah.
old-fashioned word, that comes from that connection. I mean, I you know and so they should seek they should seek it out. So it's comparing yourself to your peers. I don't know. We don't- we don't we don't really know what most people are up to. For one thing, most people don't even talk about it.
That's
Mhm.
So
right.
True.
uh,
And
we go
and
ahead, Peter.
from on the male side, again, as I mentioned, having spent time in the army, and even more recently, most men exaggerate. You know that what they're saying is probably not true, right? Because they don't want to be seen as deficient. So I don't know, Kathleen, what women do, but I know for a fact that a lot of men, if they talk about it, they will exaggerate, right? And some so much so that you know that they're exaggerating. So it's hard to know what, as you say, what normal would be. Yeah, we are running short on time,
Yes,
Kathleen.
we are. Well, I'm sure a lot of people would want to know how they can contact you and how they can get your devices.
Sure. Well, you can go to myfirmtech.com, myfirmtch.com,
Mhm.
and you can click on the science section and read about the research.
Okay.
And the research should persuade people to put a ring on it, to get the vital signs of sexual health, but also to optimize their performance and their pleasure. You can contact me personally at Elliot, Elliot, at myfirmtech.com. I set aside about 4 hours of my week to answer emails from really from all over the world. And most of those questions aren't about selling product. They're about answering people's questions. People are embarrassed to discuss this
Mhm.
with their friends,
Mhm.
and they're embarrassed to discuss it with their doctors.
Mhm.
Uh, and
Yeah.
and I'm available to help people for nothing. But if you want to purchase devices, you go to myfirmtech.com, or you can reach me personally.
Fantastic.
Excellent. And all those for our audio listeners, all those contact details will be in the description on whatever platform you happen to be listening to this on. Plus, they'll be in our newsletter. From me, thank you very much, Dr. Elliot. That was really enjoyable, reassuring, I think, for a lot of older guys too, and really enjoyed having
Peter,
you. So,
we've got men in their 80s who are sexually active.
yeah, I'm
Women,
sure.
and as are the partners, they're boys.
Well, you'll be pleased to hear we had a lady doctor on here 4 or 5 months ago.
Mhm.
Trying to scratch my brain to think of her name. She
Carol
was 80.
Rems.
Carol Rems, Dr. Carol Rems, 82, and she was talking about how older women can enjoy more active sex lives. So, yeah, so very good. Okay, thank you. Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Back to you,
Well,
Kathleen.
Thank you
well,
so much.
thank you so much for being on our show today, Dr. Elliot Justin. We so appreciated having you. And once again, thank you all so very much for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.